You're all very welcome to today's webinar. It's all about protecting your customers, ensuring that you drive as much customer retention in 2023. To do that, we're going to focus on how can you flip your NPS or CSAT to your next predictor of satisfaction. So how can you use your existing voice of customer programs to drive customer retention. Couple of quick polls just to get you started. First one is just to get you warmed up. If anyone's going to Qualtrics X4 next week, it would be great to catch you out there. Looks like the majority of people are not going out there, so don't worry, we've got another poll for you just to get you started. But that's my way of ensuring that we have interaction today. So today's definitely a two-way discussion, ultimately giving you some hopefully practical takeaways to improve your customer experience. I should have maybe asked the poll, would you like a blog of the key takeaways from Qualtrics X4? Maybe that would have been a more appropriate poll given that no one's going to be attending. So the other thing, just to let me know where in the world you're joining from today. So if you use the chat, just let me know. I'm from kind of overcast in Ireland today, so not as bright as what it should be. There's Gary. How are you, Gary? Great to see that you're joining us. Long time no see. And Christina from Texas. So Gary, she beats you from Chester. My God, as soon as I mention US, you see the Canadians piling in straight away. So we've got a few from Ontario, and Jeff and a few others joining the UK posse, as we'll call you. So a good mix of UK, Canada, and US. Catherine from Arizona and Phoenix. So you're all very welcome, and we'll get kicked off and see my good friend Yvonne is on the call as well from Charlotte. So you're all very, very welcome. So today's poll was just really to check in to see who's attending. I think there's 2 people attending. So I would love to catch up with you when you're out there. Just to flag, if you haven't heard Alex Gino speak, he's a real treat. He's got a CX book out at the moment, which is a really good read. Alex is going to be speaking on the Wednesday afternoon at 2 p.m. If you can't attend, I'll be publishing a blog on my LinkedIn, making sure that you get the key takeaways. So thank you so much for that there. So looks like that only 15% are attending the webinar, or sorry, X4 next week. But for those who are attending, look forward to catching you there. And really thinking about the fact that retention is suddenly hit our screens in 2023, mostly for the recession. And it was just really to check what your priority is for 2023. You know, is it about connecting customer retention and NPS to your bottom line? Is it about getting more prescriptive with your insights using predictive analytics? Are you wading through manual analysis? So is that driving you completely crazy, going through the text verbatims? And then are you being asked by your C-level peers about quantifying the value, the dollar value of your NPS? So it looks like predicting drivers at NPS 40%, suddenly connecting NPS to bottom line is trumped the poll. So 75% have participated. I'll just share them in a second and then we'll get started. And if there's any other priorities, you know, by all means, use the chat to please let us know. And throughout today's session, also use the Q&A. So really today is about yourselves. So I'm going to share a couple of examples, really thinking about how do you re-engineer NPS. And I talk about the next predictor of satisfied customers. So how can you use the survey, which is retrospective, to re-engineer that to be more future leaning, more insightful around future customer behavior. So that's what the real focus of today is. I'll make sure you get a copy of the poll results post-webinar as well. So that's just to let you see the key results. So there you go. So today's agenda is really trying to give you a kickstart on your customer centricity journey. You hear me talk about the link between customer and employee centricity. And if you haven't started on that journey, don't worry. Today's about giving you a turbo boost, empower you to make a difference. And if you stay to the end, you'll get a present. If you've attended any of our other webinars, you probably know what the present is. So please don't add a spoiler to the chat. But certainly, if you stay to the end, you'll walk away with a present. So just by way of introducing myself, my name is Chris Johnson. I'm the CEO of Adoreboard. And just a fairly short infomercial, we quantify human emotion from unstructured text data, and our customers use that to create what we call decision-ready insights. And then the likes of Amazon and Allstate or Cato, a whole range of companies use that to create better business outcomes. So you'll see the hint is the bridge between the unstructured raw data to a business outcome. So that's ultimately what we're going to be focused on today. And you hear me talking about the idea of human experience, which is this idea of often as CX professionals, you're caught in the silo of thinking about channels and surveys and all the rest. When that's a fact, our customers really don't really care about that. So we're going to think about where are all the touch points around the experience. How can you reposition your brand to enrich the lives of your customer and provide those moments of delight and active acts of courtesy in the experience? And we'll do that by measuring customer and employee emotions from the text data you've already captured. Just for context, we're a Gartner Cool vendor in customer analytics using AI, and also a best practice in Forrester. So today is trying to give you really tangible takeaways, and really we're going to start with the challenge. So most of you will be using NPS, CSAT, effort scores, some form of metric to kind of quantify an understanding directionally of where your customers are sitting. And ultimately, from a retention point of view, anything below 9, you're then trying to drive up and move forward. The challenge with NPS, and it's really well documented, that whilst it has its shortfalls, it's kind of the dominant metric that Fortune 500 companies still use. If you're to join any of the earnings calls from any of the Fortune 500 companies, they're calling out 4 metrics. 2 of those relate to how we measure both customer and employee experience. So they're the 2 kind of key board level metrics. So NPS, we all know rating 1 to 10, 0 to 10, whatever way you decide to measure, but ultimately you'll get the score and you'll get the open comments. And we talk about this idea of crossing the chasm, and the chasm is that gap between the metric, which tells you directionally how well you're performing, and the comment that provides that rich insight into exactly why that is the case. So the chasm is really gone between the what and the why and what next. So we're going to give you some practical examples of how you cross that chasm, and hopefully you get better results rather than, board have already bought into the CSAT and NPS. Are you really going to introduce a new metric? So it's trying to work out how do you maximize what you have today. So hopefully that aligns with your expectations, and really the opportunity. And you'll see that AI has kind of hit the headlines in recent weeks, but ultimately the data that you already have is really your source of competitive advantage. So ultimately the ones that use that unstructured data, that can be anything from text, videos, or whatever it happens to be, will give you a competitive edge, will give you that insight that will allow you to reposition your company and elevate the experience that will drive retention for the next year. The big question mark posed by MIT is, how on earth do you do that? So part of today is trying to figure out, how do you do that? How do you achieve that? And in doing so, what I want to do is to kind of give you that peppered history of how we've got to today. Suddenly technology has caught up with the ambitions of how we want to use that to engage customers, or allow them to self-serve through customer experience, or whatever that happens to be. But it seems that certainly from we love a good wave, don't we, from the likes of Gartner and Forrester. But ultimately, what we're just trying to paint the picture that actually, it was only 1950. I don't know if anyone on the call is born in that era, but not so long ago, we had the emergence of text analytics created by IBM back in the day. It was called keyword and context retrieval, so the ability to retrieve keywords. It's obviously evolved to what we call the second generation, so the ability and the promise that was to capture opinions, typically done through sentiment analysis, which is positive, negative, and neutral. And it sits within the NPS category of usefulness. Directionally, yes; practically, no. So what we're seeing now is the next generation of text analytics come through. You're seeing conversational AI. What we talk about is the idea of building narratives. So natural language understanding and generation is where we're at. We tend to see how machines can understand concepts, which are understanding the meaning of words and linking that to an emotion, and hopefully that allows you to build knowledge about your customers, but ultimately, when you're communicating insights within your organization, that you're able to provide narratives and stories, because we know that's what connects to people and decisions. So that's just really to give you a bit of a landscape, and obviously OpenAI and a whole range of other technologies have now popularized this type of technology. So ultimately, just to kind of frame where we are today, a lot of the challenges actually just staying where we're at, within a status quo. No real reason to change, given that we use NPS and all the rest. So all I'm trying to just give you a view as peering into the future and what that could actually hold. So obviously, status quo is this black and white view of customer. We want to go to this high ultra definition of understanding customer need. Want to make sentiment redundant, so sentiment having a fairly limited value to thinking about the emotional intensity. And then we want to go from word clouds, which are nice, colorful things, so they'll give you a bunch of the most recurring keywords as it relates to positive, negative, and neutral. Again, will fill a slide, which is great, but from an understanding, not so great. So we want to move from word clouds to understanding. And certainly they're as useful as pie charts in that, visually they give you something, but actually I think the data visualization experts suggested that pie charts were best left for dessert. So really give you that instant sugar hit, but from a substance perspective, not so good. And then ultimately, we're trying to move from viewing our customers and employees as a number. So how you talk about your customers will be through numbers. How many customers we have, what's their overall NPS, what's their churn, what's their lifetime value, all of that. They're trying to think about and humanize how we think about our customers as people. So, well, how do you do that? So I'm going to give you 3 practical steps that you can take today, and then we'll go into a bit of methodology about how you can quantify emotion. But I thought really to kind of be upfront so you get some value straight away. We'll go through 3 examples. So there's 3 actions you can take in the next 24 hours, 48, next week, next month, in terms of really driving customer centricity. So the first one is not to do anything but to use predictive AI to get more prescriptive. Turns out that 60% of the people on this call, that's their core challenge that they're trying to solve. They're trying to lower the risk of your decisions that you're presenting to your C-level peers, but also give you a prioritization. So we'll cover that. Number two is where you keep the metric, but change the questioning. So there's some really great techniques that we're going to look at. One's called memory writing. And we've pioneered this with Allstate, but also Unilever. So I'm going to give you two examples there. And then I want to show you if you were to swap out NPS and also change the question, that can actually lead to real transformational results. Ultimately, the third action is a more mature, CX maturity, where you're actually aligning the metric to the business objective, and then you're looking for the open-end question to give you the barriers to how you can actually make change to drive that metric. So there are the three things. Again, maybe light up the chat. If there's anything else you want me to cover, please let me know, and also use the Q&A. So the first example, and you'll see I'll be using just examples rather than kind of theoretical. So these are all live customers, just to give you a sense of how they're being applied. So number one is to keep the NPS metric, but change the question. Just a bit of context, this is for customer experience for the largest private hospital in Australia. And ultimately, they're collecting in real time 8,000 survey returns from Qualtrics every month. And what we were able to do is we were able to integrate the data from Qualtrics into Adoreboard. And what we identified was the theme of blood pressure. So it turns out that blood pressure cuffs were driving significant challenges and caused to reduce trust in the overall experience by 33%, and customers not really happy at all. So when this insight was presented to the chief customer officer, they automatically thought, all right, it's the blood pressure machines. And, we have to do something about that. But actually, as they dug into the subtopics and started seeing the verbatims and the emotions, they could actually see that it was a training challenge. So essentially, the nurses were putting the blood pressure cuffs on too tight. And every time the blood pressure went off, it was delivering a punch to their patients. So imagine, punching your customer several times during the day. You can imagine that would not only leave them with bruises on their arms, but obviously not happy with the experience. So with that, we identified that if they were to fix that issue, that would drive an 18% increase in their NPS. So ultimately, unstructured data to an insight, to an action, and delivering an improvement in their overall NPS. Now, what that delivered for HealthScope is what Jeffrey will describe. So I'll just go off camera and we'll hear exactly how this was achieved for HealthScope.
We average about 7,000 plus survey responses a month, and 90% of those will have a comment. Some of them are a Jane Austen novel, and a large portion of them are there. And within that novel is just golden nuggets of truth that are really hard for us to find and make sense of. And so we use Adoreboard to support us with really understanding the emotional context behind what our patients are telling us, so we can understand what's important to them.
So there you go. It's really about understanding the context, and this is actually a quote, and sorry, it's in sharp contrast, but I'll just read you it out. I was in enough pain that there was bruises on my arms when I got home. The response when I raised this was, some people do find it uncomfortable. I know the difference between discomfort when a cuff is too small and fitting well, and when it's too tight, producing swelling and bruising. So the key kind of takeaway is that emotion can be the connector. So in Jeffrey's word, he suggested that emotion can be the way to connect the dotted lines from patient feedback to action. So he was saying that the frontline workers, when you said that this area of focus was driving detractors or an NPS score of 4, it didn't really generate an action, whereas blood pressure cuffs were losing patient trust here. it's decreased by 33%. And by the way, if we just take our time fitting those blood pressure cuffs, it will drive an increase in patient experience. So the ability to get empathetic to retain your customers is going to be really key. And I know from the XM Institute, they've called out that that is going to be a key thing for this year, the year of empathy. So that's just to kind of help you understand using insights to get predictive to then prioritize, okay, go fix the blood pressure cuffs. Let's drive an increase in the experience. So the second example is where we keep the metric, but change where we keep the metric and we use predictive AI. So this is actually for Allstate, and we're very pleased that Yvonne has joined us from Allstate, and Yvonne, there you'll hear Sean shortly talk about Adoreboard. So it's just a quick primer. So with Adoreboard, we've been working with Allstate for the last 4 years across multiple divisions. And like any insurer, they have technology that enables how they achieve their engagement with their customers. They have a platform called DriveWise, and they are collecting data almost on a daily basis on feedback on that. They identified from our analysis that that the fact that they weren't recording trips. So the app works that as you drive better, you will get better rates in your policy. So it's like a reward program for good driving. And obviously, insurance companies want you to drive well, so you understand that it's a win-win for customer and brand. And you can see that, because it wasn't recording the trips, that was quite agitating for customers, 55% more anger compared to any other driver. And we predicted that if they made changes to the platform, that would drive a 17% increase in their CSAT. They actually took an action, and the result was it drove a 9% increase in trust. They actually were able to reduce the inbound complaints by 47%, and they achieved a 16.6% increase in CSAT. Now, that's a fairly significant increase in CSAT, and it just shows you that, if we understand the lifetime value of a customer is X dollars, and we're able to increase it by 16%, fixing something that might cost a couple of $1 million fades into pale comparison in terms of the retention. So as you're thinking of building the business case for improving customer experience, you want to think about the lifetime value. You want to think about what is the 1% increase? What does that equate to in terms of increasing retention? And then what's the value at risk? What are you putting at risk by not taking an action on the actual data? And Yvonne, you'll blush, but you'll hear Sean talking. And this is just really to give you a bit of context about how quickly it is to be able to get these insights. So if you'll just see that again. So you'll hear a customer talking about how they use the platform and the user experience in delivering that.
We just took raw data and uploaded it first before anything else, and it was actually able to give me themes right away. When I was looking at the product, I wanted to take raw data and upload it and see, was it able to split out into those 3 buckets, people, process, technology, and it was actually able to do that for us. I think Yvonne, worked with Alistair and Chris, and she was up to speed within a couple of weeks at the most. So the platform is really easy to use once you invest those first couple of days or weeks in learning how to use it. What you then do moving forward with Alistair, and this is where Alistair has been an outstanding support, constantly just working with Yvonne on upgrades or additions to the actual tool. So it'll not take you very long to get up to speed. You can just put raw data into it and you'll get insights from it right away. Where you'll spend the time is how do you refine those insights over time, and that's where your expertise and business knowledge around what you're investigating, it's really you that actually drives that.
Superb. And the reason why we call it decision ready insights is that the insights that you want to tee up to your C-level peers is that when they inhale the insights, they're able to match it to business context, right? So you're wanting to tee it up so that they spend, 60 brain calories instead of like, a full, 500 brain calories on digesting an analytics report. So it's really important about how you tee up the insights and make it as easy as possible for your leaders to prioritize this. So sticking with Allstate, we want to look at, how can you keep the metric but change the question? So this is on the employee experience side. But I think increasingly we're starting to acknowledge that, employee experience is pretty much integral to customer experience and the role that it plays. And who knew that people deliver the majority of customer experience for the majority of brands, even with Amazon, which is, one click. It's the handbrakes that the Amazon delivery drivers that can shape the perceptions of the overall experience. So, people are super important. But this is an example that you can apply also to customer experience. It's a technique called memory writing. And the reason why it's called memory writing is that as humans, we encode into memory emotions. So the idea is that, to protect you, as we've evolved as humans, the fact is that negative experiences are recalled more sharply than positive. And the idea is, stick your hand in the fire, you'll remember what it feels like and you won't do it again. So this is the idea of enabling that through the experience to actually enable your customers to use this idea of memory writing, which is a journaling technique, to enable them to share the experiences. So the context is Allstate have a really significant and aggressive goal to recruit people. And to do that, they want to obviously increase productivity and reduce, the onboarding time it takes for their customers to become, their employees to become productive. So they use the technique of memory writing in the first 90 days of the experience. They identified that the onboarding, parts of the onboarding process were driving significant challenges. Essentially, they were giving the 90% of the value of the onboarding in the last 10 days, connecting with peer learning, giving digital training resources to employees, having social events, and understanding that, the majority of time focused on process, and process around transactional experiences was driving 52% less trust. They turned that on its head. They flipped the experience and they were able to reduce onboarding time by 20%. So it's even thinking about, what is the onboarding experience for your customers? How do you achieve that time to value? Or CUSP, as we discovered for one of our clients, ESOP, where their customers are actually measuring for a beauty product, how many times they have to use it to get a return on investment. So I think in the environment of retention, you have to think about, what's the overall journey that you're creating. And I think memory writing can play a role in that. And just to kind of expand this example, Unilever used it to measure new product releases. So they will test products in the wild and get people to use journals to capture the experience. And then they'll actually match that to segmentation. So, Unilever being Unilever, they'll match hair type to the prototypes and placebos and be able to say which products engender most joy from a shampoo and all the rest, and measure that in broader context. But that's just to show you how you can keep the metric and change the question. So I want to give you an example of how you can actually get rid of the metric and change the question and align it to your business objectives. So this is for Microsoft, and during COVID, they have engineers located right across the world, and they're trying to deliver the best customer experience in a fairly challenging and changing environment. And that, as we all know, was COVID. And really what they thought about was, what is the actual business objective? And the business objective for them was to measure how confident people were delivering a good customer experience remotely. So their metric was, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you to maintain customer service during COVID? And the open-end question was, what are the barriers to at home and at work? So they were almost kind of teeing up, if they removed the barriers at home and work, they could increase the outcome, which is to improve the confidence of their employees to deliver a great customer experience. So obviously identified there was challenges around mental health, internet connectivity, as we all know, and for different regions of the world more challenging than others. We predicted if they solve some of those issues, they would drive a 13% increase in the confidence to deliver a great customer experience. So that's just to give you an example of how you can use emotion AI in that context and to use that to predict. So it's really to kind of show you those three lenses to help you understand how you can make some changes using your existing metrics. So I want to pause there now just to kind of, show you very quickly, where we've reached the point in the webinar where we haven't gone too deeply into, what are some of the real practical examples, but I'm maybe just going to pause here just to explain for the people who've stayed for the last 30 minutes, what the present was. So for everyone attending today's webinar, they will get 3 predictive insights that will be based on online reviews of your brand. And if you so choose to provide your own data, 1,000 rows will provide it on your NPS or CSAT data. So if you hear from myself or Carl or Andrew or Gerard in the next hours, you'll know it's in relation to the follow-up for the complimentary offer. And please bear with us. We do this every time with really surprising responses. So, if we don't get you today, you'll get an email in the coming days. So please bear with us. So we now have another few minutes. I'm going to ask you at this point whether you would see value in learning a bit more about emotion AI, and if so, I'll go into a couple of more examples, or we can go straight into the Q&A. So maybe if you light up the chat, just to kind of make sure that with that original objective to understand how you can quantify human emotion, retain your customers, is there any questions coming out of that? And then I'll come back on screen to answer those. So maybe I'll maybe ask some of the people that I know, like Gary and others, to maybe, any questions that illuminate some of the challenges that you're seeing in terms of analysis. So Christina gets a brownie points because she's first asked a question, and the question that she is asking, about the integration of different touch points. So I'll maybe just address that while we're waiting for more examples. And the example that she's talking about is in relation to call center data. So when I was talking about decision-ready insights, I was referencing the ability to integrate the data, understand what drives the emotions, and apply decision-ready insight. We tend to, the majority of people have already captured the data. So you'll probably have the data through Variant or Qualtrics, Clarabridge, whatever that is, Medallia. And ultimately, what we're doing is we're able to, what we call speed to insight. So get that raw transactional comment files into our system to create insights. And how we do that is we're giving you a consistent measurement framework. So regardless of the channel, we're able to quantify that text data, be it a voice file. So most of the providers like Genesis and Variant and all the others will capture the voice. The majority will do voice to text, and you can get those transcripts from those tools, or you can just, fairly easily, get the voice to text file translated. So once the data goes in, ultimately what you're able to do is you're able to get a directional score, correlate that to your operational metric, go to an emotional index, and then go to a specific emotion and theme. So the example here is for Apple, and you're probably going, well, what's wrong with Apple? -72 in the anger. So we can go to the joy index and see that people love going into the Genius bar and getting a great employee experience. It doesn't really explain the anger. So weirdly, people hate getting emoji keyboard updates, and only if Apple could fix the battery in the charger. So Apple, go fix the battery in the charger. So even with, to Christina's example with the call center, you're probably getting a CSAT score, but are you understanding, what are the drivers? You've got all that data logged away in voice. So how do you, serve that up to your executives in a way they don't have to listen to the verbatims or read transcripts or whatever? So this is a really simple way to do that. And what we're giving you out of the box is this ability to get to this presentation layer. So we'll give you a score on an index -100 to +100. We'll break that score down into adored, floored, and ignored. Adored is from joy to trust. Floored is from anger to fear. And then we're measuring transactional, non-emotional language. We'll then correlate that to whatever your metric is on your upload. So you typically, Qualtrics or SurveyMonkey even, or Medallia, they'll give you the export of the comments plus metric and any segmentation data. You can upload that into your system with a one-click with Qualtrics. And we'll do an automatic correlation on the fly, and then we'll give you 3 predictions. So these predictions are really providing a prioritization. That prioritization works from a emotional intensity perspective. So you're bringing the customer into your decision-making process, but then you're quantifying, okay, if we do make that change, what is the impact on the actual operational metric? So the example here for Starbucks is that people hate waiting in Starbucks queues. It's generating relative conversation, 4% of their customers talking about it. It's driving 14% more sadness. If they're to improve the app, that would drive a 1% increase in NPS. So the lifetime value piece that I talked about earlier is trying to equate, if you were to invest whatever it would cost to improve the app, are you going to get that back from either, people spending more using, digital enablement through the app, or do you retain what you have? So out of this, you will get up to 10 different predictions. And I'll just maybe focus on the third prediction, which is product temperature. So the idea here is we're trying to team this up from a narrative perspective. So you can see the theme is product temperature. It's driving 4% of the volume, 15% more sadness compared to the overall data set. And if their training was to help, people hand the coffees over quicker, or to check the thermostats on the coffee machines, that would drive their NPS by 1%. And you can see that no one loves a cold hot chocolate. So that's just to give you a bit of context. I can see a question relating to, well, how do you actually measure emotion? So I'll maybe spend a second on that, and then I'll go into a quick example. So the key thing to think about is how your customers actually make decisions. So how they make decisions is that they use emotion and they justify using logic. So 80% of your customers' decisions are driven by emotion, and your challenge is to move it from, viewing that as a metric to viewing it as understanding them as actual people. We use a model called Plutchik's Wheel of Emotion. It's based on 4 decades of empirical research. We're a spin out of the world leader in emotion AI, Queen's University here in Belfast. And there are 3 key takeaways for you about emotion, just to kind of boil the theory into 3 takeaways. Number 1 is that if you're to think about and use sentiment as a way to measure, it's fundamentally wrong, because, ultimately emotions are expressed in different ways about different attributes. So, you know, I love using the mobile phone, you know, taking photos of the kids, you know, capturing memories. Absolutely drives me insane that I'm forever without a charger because the battery's not great. So I can experience different emotions about the same kind of brand experience. And your job as CX practitioner is to kind of parse those elements apart and to prioritize and elevate the moments of joy, and to remove the things that are causing friction. Ultimately, to do that, you need a compass point. So how do you understand where your customers are now? You know, hit the battery life. So if you re-engineer the battery life, and you know, Apple releases screen time where you can start to get some analytics on your battery life versus what you've actually used to now create a more interesting and joyful experience. So that's the idea that emotions, you can actually control how you orientate your customers, because emotions are opposite. And then finally, emotions go from low intensity to medium to high. These can be positive, from acceptance to trust to admiration, or from your perspective, you want to arrest the experience at the annoyance phase. So that's just to kind of answer the question on the emotional framework. I've got another 3 minutes, so I'll maybe just put it to the floor for more questions. And while I'm doing that, I'll just give a quick overview of our platform. So I talked about 3 steps to decision-ready insights. And just before I do that, is there options to trial Adoreboard before implementation? 100%. So if you let me know who's asking that question, I'll set that up directly after the call. So we provide a pilot based on success criteria, and we'll guide you through that. So, and part of the 3 insights is to kind of give you value up front. So that's our way of thanking you for your time today. So great question. And by all means, you know, message me directly and I'll set you up with our customer success team. So I talked about 3 steps, decision ready insight. Step number 1 is to integrate the data. You'll see the Qualtrics, you know, it's simply a double click, get the data in, or simply drag and drop the data in. So I'm just going to go into an example of a clothing retailer. And the value here is that I'm going to very quickly hit this button called Insights, and I'll pops your presentation. So we tend to hear that there's maybe 5 key jobs to be done for CX professionals to retain their customers. Number 1 is to kind of predict the drivers of NPS. So you can see, you know, unsatisfactory chat is not great. You know, if they're to improve that, that would drive the experience by 2%. You know, you can see issues with refunds and returns, all of that good stuff. And we can actually assign an action to that. And the second job to be done is to add context. So we can very quickly compare, you know, Boohoo to ASOS, and we can start to measure the emotional experience gap. So you can start to understand that there's a reduction in trust between these 2 brands. And we can then start to compare indicators, next day delivery, you know, one indicator being really good, you know, and we can actually go in and change that. So that's just to give you the idea that you can measure and add context to your analysis on the issues. So that's just to show you that you can generate all of those slides. And then the third job to be done is a strategic view of the data. So with that, you can get a SWOT analysis automatically from the analysis. So you can, as you are adding the themes, you can see that where that fits within the experience, refunds and all the rest. This will generate a further 2 slides. We do trend analysis and a whole range of other things, journey mapping being one of the others, but that was just to give you a sense of the core jobs to be done as it relates to customer retention. So all I have to do is to thank you. We're up on time, so really appreciate you taking time today. For those who are attending Qualtrics X4 next week, hopefully I'll get a chance to say hello. And for those not, I'll be keeping track of all the key learnings that I'll be sharing on LinkedIn and as follow-up content of the webinar as well. So look, thank you so much for your time. Look out for those 3 complimentary insights. If you hear a beautiful Irish lilt, you'll know it's Big Carl from the Adoreboard office, along with Andrew, Gerard, and Dylan, all waiting to take your requirements for the 3 insights. So please bear with them as they reach out in the coming days. So all I have to do is to thank you and look forward to speaking to you in the coming days and weeks. Thanks again. Cheers now. Bye-bye.